In a world that glorifies constant connection, the idea of choosing solitude is often misunderstood. Society assumes that those who prefer to be alone must be lonely, antisocial, or even broken in some way. But this couldn't be further from the truth. Choosing solitude is not a weakness. It is a mark of strength, independence, and deep self-awareness. Many of history's greatest thinkers, leaders, and creators have embraced solitude, not as a form of isolation, but as a tool for growth. Marcus Aurelius, Leonardo da Vinci, and Nikola Tesla all spent long periods alone, refining their thoughts, sharpening their skills, and cultivating their inner strength. They did not fear being apart from the crowd. They understood that true wisdom and power are often found in silence. Modern psychology backs this up. Studies show that people who are comfortable being alone often exhibit higher levels of emotional intelligence, creativity, and resilience. They are not dependent on external validation. They do not need constant noise or distractions to feel whole. Instead, they find purpose, clarity, and strength in solitude. But make no mistake, this path is not for everyone. Those who choose to walk alone possess distinct personality traits that set them apart from the rest. Some admire them for their independence, others resent them for it. Either way, they cannot be ignored. So what makes these individuals different? What qualities do they have that allow them to embrace solitude, while others fear it? Here are 7 distinct personality traits that define those who choose to be alone. Before we begin, take action now. Like this video, subscribe to Victory Stoic, and share this message with someone who needs to hear it. And in the comments, tell us, have you ever felt stronger in solitude? Let's build a community of thinkers, creators, and individuals who refuse to follow the crowd. Number 1. They take full responsibility for their lives. Most people look outward when life doesn't go their way. They blame the economy, their upbringing, bad luck, or the people around them. But those who choose solitude, they never see themselves as victims. They understand that no one is coming to save them, and no one is responsible for their success or failure except themselves. This level of self-reliance is rare. It requires a deep understanding that life is not fair, and complaining about it will not change anything. Instead of wasting time making excuses, they focus on what they can control. The power of extreme ownership. A person who thrives in solitude does not wait for permission. They do not need a mentor, a lucky break, or a perfect situation to take action. They take full ownership of their choices, their mistakes, and their future. This mindset is not just philosophical, it is the key to real success. Jocko Willink, a former Navy SEAL and leadership expert, calls it extreme ownership. The idea is simple. Everything that happens in your life is your responsibility. Even if it's not your fault, it's still your problem to solve. The difference between those who blame others and those who take ownership is the difference between mediocrity and greatness. The story of Theodore Roosevelt. From weak to unstoppable. As a child, Theodore Roosevelt was weak, sickly, and often bedridden due to severe asthma. Doctors told him that he would never live a physically active life. Most people in his position would have accepted their limitations, but Roosevelt refused. Instead of making excuses, he took responsibility for his health. His father told him, "You have the mind, but you have not the body. You must make your body." And that's exactly what he did. He spent years training his body, forcing himself to grow stronger despite the odds. By adulthood, he was not just healthy. He became a rancher, a soldier, and one of the toughest men to ever hold the office of the president. Roosevelt could have blamed his genetics, his doctors, or his circumstances, but he didn't. He chose to take full responsibility for his own transformation. The story of Malcolm X, transforming in solitude. Before Malcolm X became one of the most influential figures in American history, he was a criminal imprisoned for burglary. Many in his situation would have wasted away in prison, blaming the system, blaming their past, blaming society. But Malcolm X chose something different. During his years in solitary confinement, he used his time alone to educate himself. He read every book he could find, sharpened his mind, and completely transformed his way of thinking. By the time he left prison, he was not the same man. He was a leader, a speaker, and a force that history could not ignore. Had he blamed others for his downfall? Had he waited for the world to change, instead of changing himself, his name would have been forgotten. why this defines those who choose to be alone. People who willingly embrace solitude do not need external forces to shape them. They shape themselves. They do not seek sympathy. They do not expect the world to be fair. They understand that life is hard, and instead of complaining, they adapt, evolve, and take ownership of their own destiny. This is what makes them different. This is what makes them powerful. Number 2, they think more deeply than most. They make room for silence and reflection. Most people fear silence. They fill every moment with distractions, small talk, endless scrolling, background noise, anything to avoid being alone with their thoughts. But those who choose solitude, they embrace silence, not as an absence, but as a presence. A space where thoughts can sharpen, ideas can evolve, and the mind can breathe. They do not chase shallow conversations or meaningless entertainment. Instead, they seek depth, clarity, and truth. They are not easily swayed by emotions or trends because they have taken the time to examine everything, from their beliefs to the world around them, with precision and purpose. The power of thinking in a world that fears it. In an age where everyone has an opinion but few take the time to think, depth is a rare trait. Most people react rather than reflect. They listen to respond, not to understand. They accept without questioning, follow without hesitation, and assume without evidence. But deep thinkers? They pause. They observe before they judge. They listen before they speak. They do not take things at face value, because they know that truth is rarely found on the surface. Seneca once said, "The greatest obstacle to living is expectancy, which hangs upon tomorrow and loses today. You are arranging what lies in fortune's control and abandoning what lies in yours." This is why those who embrace solitude often seem wiser than their years. They are not obsessed with immediate validation or temporary excitement. They understand that to truly know something, one must first sit with it, question it, and allow it to reveal itself over time. The story of Nikola Tesla, the man who thought in silence. One of the greatest minds in history, Nikola Tesla was known not only for his genius, but for his unusual habits. Unlike many inventors who worked in teams or sought external inspiration, Tesla would spend hours, sometimes days, in absolute solitude, visualizing his ideas before ever putting them on paper. While others rushed to act, Tesla sat with his thoughts. He would construct entire inventions in his mind, testing them mentally before ever building a prototype. This ability to think deeply, without distraction, allowed him to create technologies far beyond his time, alternating current, radio waves, and wireless energy. Most people would have dismissed such solitude as wasted time. But Tesla understood something they didn't. The most powerful work happens before action begins. The story of Cato, the man who refused to be manipulated. In the final years of the Roman Republic, the statesman Cato the Younger was surrounded by corruption, manipulation, and political deceit. The men around him were skilled in persuasion, leaders who could sway crowds with charm and empty promises. But Cato? He was immune. While others were swept away by emotion and rhetoric, Cato remained unmoved because he had trained his mind to see through illusions. He was known for his habit of deep reflection, spending long periods in thought, questioning everything before taking action. His moral clarity was not accidental. It was forged in silence, sharpened by his refusal to accept things without scrutiny. When Julius Caesar rose to power, many Romans surrendered to the promise of stability, even at the cost of their freedom. But Cato, he saw through it. He stood alone, refusing to bend, because his thinking was his own, unshaped by the noise of the crowd. The hidden strength of deep thinkers. In a world that moves fast, those who think deeply are often misunderstood. People call them too serious, too detached, too intense. But that is because most people are uncomfortable with true depth. It forces them to confront their own shallow thinking. Those who embrace solitude do not fear depth because they have made peace with silence. They do not rush to react because they understand that wisdom takes time. They do not accept easy answers because they have learned that truth requires effort. And this is why they are different. They do not just think, they think with precision. They do not just listen, they listen to understand. They do not just live, they live with clarity. In a world where noise is constant and distractions are endless, they have mastered the rarest skill of all, the ability to hear their own mind. Number 3, They are extremely loyal. Loyalty is a rare trait in a world where convenience often outweighs commitment. Most people are loyal only when it benefits them, when it's easy, when there's something to gain, or when it aligns with their interests. But those who choose solitude, they are different. Their loyalty is not based on circumstances, but on principles. These individuals do not give their trust easily, but when they do, it is unbreakable. They are not the kind of people who disappear when times get tough or betray others for personal gain. They stand firm, because to them, loyalty is not just a virtue, it is part of their identity. Loyalty in a world that lacks it. Modern society encourages people to be transactional. Friendships are often built on convenience, relationships are abandoned at the first sign of difficulty, and commitments are broken when they no longer feel exciting. But those who choose solitude do not operate this way. They may not have many friends, but the ones they do have, they would stand by them through fire. They may not be the loudest in a group, but when they make a promise, it is set in stone. They understand that true loyalty is tested not when things are good, but when everything falls apart. The story of Daniel and Mark, a friendship that defied all odds. Daniel and Mark had been friends since childhood. They grew up in the same neighborhood, played on the same baseball team, and had each other's backs through everything. As they got older, life took them in different directions. Daniel became a lawyer, and Mark, despite his intelligence, struggled to find stability. After a series of bad decisions, Mark ended up in prison. Most people distanced themselves from him. Friends disappeared. Even some family members stopped visiting. But Daniel, he never left. For years he wrote letters, visited when he could, and reminded Mark that his mistakes did not define him. When Mark was released, society had already judged him. Job opportunities were limited. Old friends had moved on. But Daniel was still there. He helped Mark get back on his feet, not because he had to, not because it was easy, but because real loyalty does not expire when things get difficult. The story of Emily, standing by the people who stood by her. Emily had a best friend, Sarah, who had always supported her. Through heartbreaks, job losses, and personal struggles, Sarah was always there when Emily needed her. Years later, the roles reversed. Sarah hit a rough patch. She lost her job, struggled with depression, and withdrew from people. Many of their mutual friends started avoiding her. No one wanted to deal with someone who wasn't fun anymore. But Emily? She stayed. She called even when Sarah didn't answer. She showed up even when Sarah pushed her away. She refused to let her friends suffer alone. And when Sarah finally got back on her feet, she knew that Emily wasn't just a friend, she was family. Why this trait defines those who choose solitude. Loyalty requires strength. It requires standing by people, not just when it's easy, but when it's hard. It requires looking past temporary setbacks, past personal inconvenience, and staying true to what really matters. Those who choose to be alone do not have time for shallow connections. They do not collect people for status or entertainment. They value depth over quantity, commitment over convenience. And when they choose to stand by someone, they do not waver. They do not leave. They do not betray. Because in a world where loyalty is rare, they remain unshakable. Number 4, they have unshakable inner confidence and strong personal principles. Most people build their confidence on external validation. They need compliments to feel attractive, promotions to feel successful, and social approval to feel worthy. But those who choose solitude, their confidence does not come from outside. They carry it within. They do not seek attention, nor do they try to impress anyone. They know who they are, and that is enough. Their value is not dictated by the opinions of others, by social status, or by temporary achievements. It is rooted in something deeper: self-respect, discipline, and unwavering principles. Confidence without noise. Confidence is often mistaken for loudness. People assume that the most charismatic, outgoing, or outspoken individuals are the most self-assured. But true confidence, it is quiet. It does not need to announce itself. It does not seek approval. It simply exists. Those who embrace solitude do not need to prove themselves. They are not concerned with looking important or being admired. They move through the world with a quiet strength that demands respect, not because they ask for it, but because they embody it. Epictetus once said, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control." A truly confident person does not waste time chasing things that do not matter. He focuses on what he can control, himself. The story of James, walking away from validation. James had always been a high achiever. In school, he thrived on grades. At work, he chased promotions. On social media, he measured his worth by the number of likes and comments. His confidence depended on external approval. Then one day, it all collapsed. A project he had worked on for months was rejected. He was passed over for a promotion. His social media engagement dropped. And for the first time, James felt completely lost. He realized something disturbing. He had spent his entire life depending on other people to tell him he was enough. So he made a change. He stepped away from social media. He stopped trying to impress his boss. He took a break from seeking validation. And in that silence, he found himself. James started living by his own standards. He worked hard not to impress, but because he valued excellence. He trained his body not to show off, but to test his own discipline. He read books not to appear smart, but because knowledge mattered to him. Months later, his energy had changed. People noticed. They respected him more, not because he demanded it, but because he no longer needed it. The story of Olivia, a woman who refused to compromise her values. Olivia was a lawyer, sharp and driven. She had worked hard to build a career based on honesty and integrity. But in her industry, many people took shortcuts, twisted the truth, and played politics to get ahead. At first, she was pressured to do the same. Everyone does it, they said. If you want to succeed, you have to bend the rules. But Olivia refused. She knew who she was. She would rather walk away from an opportunity than compromise her principles. And at times, she paid the price. She lost cases because she wouldn't manipulate evidence. She missed promotions because she wouldn't play office politics. But over time, something interesting happened. The right people took notice. Clients who valued integrity sought her out. Colleagues who admired strength respected her. And in the end, she built a career not based on manipulation, but on the quiet power of someone who stands firm in what they believe. Why this defines those who choose solitude. A person who does not seek validation is a person who cannot be controlled. They do not bend their values for approval. They do not compromise their standards for acceptance. They do not change themselves to fit in. Those who embrace solitude walk their own path. They set their own rules. They do not seek attention, but when they speak, people listen. They do not chase approval, but their presence commands respect. Because true confidence is not about how you look, what you own, or who admires you. It is about knowing your worth, whether the world recognizes it or not. Number 5. They have a mysterious and unmistakable presence. There is something undeniably magnetic about those who choose solitude. They do not seek attention, yet people notice them. They do not try to impress, yet others feel drawn to them. This is not because of anything they actively do, but because of who they are, a rare combination of self-possession, depth, and quiet strength that sets them apart from the average person. Mystery is powerful. In a world where most people reveal too much, too quickly, on social media, in casual conversations, in desperate attempts to be understood, those who hold back create an air of intrigue. Their presence is compelling because it invites curiosity rather than demands recognition. They are unpredictable, not in an erratic way, but in a way that suggests depth beyond the surface. People cannot easily categorize them, and that makes them unforgettable. What makes them so different? The answer lies in the way they move through the world. They do not engage in small talk for the sake of filling silence. They speak with purpose. They do not over-explain themselves or feel the need to justify their actions. They let their results speak. They do not follow trends or seek social validation. They define their own standards. Because of this, they remain slightly out of reach, always one step beyond what others can fully grasp. Psychologists have found that unpredictability increases attraction. The human mind is wired to seek patterns, to categorize and understand everything it encounters. But when someone does not fit a predictable mold, they become infinitely more interesting. Their thoughts are not shaped by the collective opinions of the world, and their confidence does not come from the approval of others. This makes people curious about them, not because they are loud or attention-seeking, but because they seem to exist in a space beyond the ordinary. The paradox of those who embrace solitude is that while they do not crave admiration, they often receive it. People are drawn to confidence that does not need to be proven, intelligence that does not need to be displayed, and strength that does not seek dominance. Their presence commands respect, not because they ask for it, but because they radiate an energy that makes others take notice. The way they carry themselves, the way they observe before speaking, the way they are unaffected by trivial drama, these traits make them stand out effortlessly. Mystery is not about withholding information for the sake of being secretive. It is about having enough self-control to reveal only what is necessary, to let people earn their way into your world, rather than granting access to just anyone. Those who choose to be alone are not isolated because they cannot connect with others, but because they understand that connection should be meaningful, not just frequent. Their relationships are deep, their words have weight, and their presence lingers in people's minds long after they are gone. What makes them attractive is not their desire to be seen, but their ability to remain whole even when no one is watching. They are comfortable in their own company, which makes others want to be around them. They are not easy to define, which makes people want to understand them. They are not seeking anything from the world, which makes the world seek them, and that is the essence of true, effortless magnetism. Number 6. They do not feel uncomfortable being alone. Most people fear solitude. They view being alone as something to be avoided, a state that signals isolation, boredom, or even failure. They constantly seek distractions, social media, noise, conversations that hold no depth, because silence feels unsettling. But those who choose solitude, they do not just tolerate being alone, they thrive in it. This is not because they dislike people or social interaction, but because they have found completeness within themselves. They do not need constant engagement to feel fulfilled, nor do they seek validation through the presence of others. Instead, they recognize solitude for what it truly is: a rare space where clarity, self-mastery, and personal power are cultivated. Why do most people struggle with being alone? Because it forces them to confront themselves. In solitude, there are no distractions to numb discomfort, no external validation to reinforce self-worth, no societal expectations to dictate behavior. It is just them and their thoughts. And for many, that is terrifying. They are not afraid of being alone. They are afraid of what they might find in that silence. But those who embrace solitude see it differently. They understand that to truly know oneself, one must first be willing to sit with oneself. They do not run from introspection, nor do they fill their days with empty stimulation to avoid it. Instead, they use time alone to reflect, to think deeply, and to sharpen their mind. They treat solitude as a privilege, not a punishment. This ability to be alone without discomfort signals an unshakable inner foundation. It means that they do not depend on the outside world to shape their emotions or sense of purpose. They are not easily swayed by social pressure because they have spent enough time understanding their own values. They do not fear silence because they have trained their mind to be a place of peace, not chaos. And most importantly, they are not desperate for company, which means they never settle for the wrong company. Ironically, this ability to be alone makes them more attractive to others. People who are at peace with themselves radiate a different kind of energy. One that is neither needy nor desperate, but grounded and self-assured. They do not cling to relationships out of fear of loneliness, nor do they force themselves into environments that do not align with them. They choose their connections wisely because they know that they are already whole on their own. Most people seek external stimulation to avoid feeling empty. But those who choose solitude, they have already filled themselves from within. Number 7. They love exploring the unknown. Most people seek comfort. They follow routines, avoid uncertainty, and cling to what is familiar. But those who choose solitude, they are different. They do not fear the unknown. They are drawn to it. Instead of resisting change, they embrace it. Instead of seeking safety, they seek discovery. This is not just about travel or adventure. Their exploration is both external and internal. They question assumptions, challenge beliefs, and refuse to live within the limits society imposes. They do not accept things at face value. They dig deeper. They do not live passively. They actively shape their experiences. To them, life is not meant to be observed, it is meant to be lived. The explorer's mindset, why they think differently. Most people want predictability. They want clear answers, stable routines, and a path that guarantees security. But those who choose solitude understand a simple truth. Growth never happens inside the comfort zone. Seneca once said, "It is not because things are difficult that we do not dare. It is because we do not dare that things are difficult." People who embrace solitude are not afraid to start over, to question everything, or to walk paths that others avoid. They understand that the world is vast, not just in landscapes, but in ideas, perspectives, and experiences. They are not content with what they know. They are always seeking more. The story of Michael, trading stability for discovery. Michael had a stable job, a predictable routine, and a life that others would call successful. But deep down, he felt trapped. Every day looked the same. Every conversation felt repetitive. He knew there was more to life, but fear held him back. One day, he made a decision. He left his job, sold most of his belongings, and moved to a new city with no plan. His friends called him reckless. His family worried he was making a mistake. But for the first time in years, he felt alive. Over the next few months, he met people who challenged his thinking, took up skills he never imagined learning, and redefined what success meant to him. He realized that life is not about following a script. It is about writing your own. The story of Sarah, learning to question everything. Sarah was raised in a strict environment where questioning things was discouraged. She was told to follow the rules, believe what she was taught, and never challenge authority. But deep inside, she always felt something was missing. At 25, she started reading philosophy. She discovered Stoicism, Buddhism, and existentialism, ideas that completely reshaped her worldview. She began traveling alone, exposing herself to different cultures, perspectives, and ways of thinking. She realized that most of what she had been taught was not absolute truth. It was just one version of it. For the first time, she understood that life is not meant to be lived by someone else's rules. It is meant to be explored, questioned, and experienced fully. Why this makes them different. Those who choose solitude do not just accept life as it is. They do not live based on assumptions, traditions, or expectations. They explore not just the world, but themselves. They are not afraid to leave behind what no longer serves them. They do not cling to certainty because they understand that certainty is an illusion. While others fear change, they embrace it. While others seek comfort, they seek challenge. While others wait for permission, they go out and discover. And that is why they are different. Not because they know more than others, but because they never stopped searching. Conclusion: solitude is a mark of strength, not weakness. The world often misunderstands those who choose to be alone. Society assumes that solitude is a sign of isolation, weakness, or a lack of connection. But the truth is the opposite. Those who embrace solitude are not running away from the world. They are mastering themselves. They do not need constant noise to feel alive. They do not need validation to feel worthy. They are whole, even in silence. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." Those who can find peace within themselves will never be shaken by the chaos of the world. They do not fear solitude because they have turned it into a source of strength. They think deeply, act with purpose, and move through life on their own terms. They are independent not because they reject people, but because they refuse to be dependent on them. If you see yourself in these traits, take pride in it. You do not need a crowd to confirm your value. You have already built it from within. While others seek distractions, you seek clarity. While others fear being alone, you have made solitude your power. And that is what makes you different.